wanted to make a little introduction video and tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Patience Blythe Creech, and I am the co-owner of a small growing herb farm in Elgin, Texas. I am a computer science teacher, I am a jeweler, and I love to sew. I do a lot of different things to keep myself creatively motivated and busy and engaged, and I find that creativity is a very powerful tool to help with anxiety and worry. And so I wanted to kind of show you a little bit about what I do in this video, and then show you some examples of things that I've made, as well as I'm going to share some gardening videos with you that I've been making lately to help people learn how to get started gardening. I have a very large vegetable garden that I work on with my husband Cody, and this is our third spring summer season at our house here in Elgin, so it's really kind of getting good out there. So thanks for joining me, thanks for coming to the Luna Market, and can't wait to see you all in person, but this is a great alternative. So one of the things I really love to do, I have gotten into this the last several years, is quilting. I have a really good friend named Jonesy, and she has taught me a lot about quilting. This is my first full-size quilt that I made using a actual quilt pattern. I had done just patchwork block quilts before for many years, but this really was the first one that was challenging to me. So I decided to do a log cabin. So you can see the log cabins always start with a red center, the hearth of the home, and then usually have a contrast of lights versus dark. So that's what I did with this one. When I finished those blocks, I decided to ground them in gray, a gray background, and then use the little tiny red to kind of pick up the red in the middle of the block and divide out my big squares. So this, I actually, because it was my first one, I didn't quite size it right. It's a little big, but that's okay. And I wanted to show you that I also hand quilted this quilt. You can probably see in the middle there, it's basically a mandala pattern that starts radiating out from the center. And I'm gonna pick up a corner and show you. It's easier to see from the back. So you can see here, I have some hearts. I really love hearts, use them a lot. And then leaves in the corners. And then if you just look closely, you can see the hand quilting. I loved doing it. It took forever. So I believe that I'll alternate between hand and machine quilting from now on, but I'm really glad I got that experience. This is my sewing area. Used to be my son's room, but we've moved him out into his own little tiny house abode on our property, so now his room has become my sewing room, which is so exciting. I got this really awesome sewing table a while back on Facebook Marketplace, so always keep your eyes peeled. I've been looking for one for a long time. You can see it kind of folds out and has a lot of space and storage and things like that. Like everybody else who sews in the world, I have been making masks. I am in the middle of making 60 of them. I've got 30 of them completed, and these are the masks that I am making as a science teacher. These are actually autoclavable masks, meaning that healthcare professionals can wear them and then also sterilize them, which they can't do even with the N95. So I've been trying to get a boatload of them done to send to the clinic here in town and some other healthcare workers that I know. I have my Husqvarna that I love, and I also have my favorite sewing machine, which is my vintage Singer, which I just love. And the Singer does everything except for a zigzag stitch, which is why I have the Husqvarna out, and I'm using it to make up those masks. But generally speaking, I pretty much only use this 1951 Singer, and I just love this machine. I got it from an antique dealer years ago, and it just is a workhorse. It's amazing. So this is my garden. I wanted to show you that. It's where I spend a lot of my time these days. I've really especially with the pandemic, have really just jumped right into the garden. I've always loved it and I've gardened for years, but I think this year is really a special year for the garden. So I just kind of wanted to show you a little bit. Sorry about the compost pile. My husband and I spend a lot of time gardening together. This is definitely a big collaborative project of ours, and gardening always has been a part of our relationship, which I really love. We moved here to Elgin from Dripping Springs 3 years ago, and we had a big garden there too. So we're just kind of getting this one almost to the point that where we had our garden in Dripping. And I think that by next year we'll really have it there, but we do really love it a lot. You can see in the back he's putting in a pond, and the back area back there is our watermelon patch. His grandpa always grew watermelons, so he does too. But we really love this space, and I find gardening to be a wonderful space for creativity, but also it's practical and you eat the food, and that's a good thing. These are our chickens. This year I'm focusing a lot on native flowers and medicinal herbs, and those are still pretty small, so they're not very exciting to look at right now, but I'll be making more videos about those later on. So this is my studio space where I make jewelry, and I went to jewelry school in central Mexico back in the early 2000s, in 2004. And went to a school called Sterling Quest, had an amazing experience, and I've been doing jewelry since then, so I'm really lucky to have a studio space at home. I also share a studio in Austin with studio mates, but currently our studio is closed because of the pandemic, so I'm very sad about that, but we'll get back there again. So I just wanted to show you some stuff. I tend to only work in silver and gold. I use lots of fun, beautiful stones. You can see a bunch of them over there. I use found objects. I use what other people might consider to be junk. And right now I'm playing with this piece. I'm hoping to have finished by the Luna Market. I have played with this thing for a couple of years and still haven't quite found it, but I think we're getting there. This is a heart talisman. I was having a hard time at work when I was making it with some really negative people, and I was working in an environment where I was teaching engineering, and I was working at a STEM school. So it was kind of inspired by abacus. So this is kind of to mimic that sort of an abacus kind of shape, and then this is the heart. And then of course I have a drawn heart again. So I use hearts a lot in my work. They show up all over the place. And so now I'm just trying to figure out, how does it become the neck piece that I really want it to be. So behind me is my favorite poem, poster, whatever you want to call it, about art created by the amazing folks at Bread and Puppet, which is a puppet company up in the Northeast, close to where I'm from. I'm actually from Maine and in England, but now I'm a Texan, so I feel like I come from all over the place. So I just kind of wanted to talk about creativity just for a minute. I am a very creative person. I'm lucky to be surrounded by creative people and meet those people wherever I go. I am lucky to teach creativity. I teach computer science, but that really is teaching kids to be open to new ideas that may not have been figured out yet. I teach engineering and design and art. All those things combine for me somewhere in our hearts and minds, where we are open to creating things. I find through my work of teaching people, I've taught kids, I've taught adults, I've taught here in Texas, I've taught up north. I find that a lot of times we have a barrier to our own sense of creativity, and that comes from a space from when we were young. Somebody told us that something about ourselves wasn't good enough, and so we abandon our openness and our willingness to take on our creative powers. One of the things I love about teaching creativity is trying to get people to open up and take a risk with their own sense of their power to create beauty in their life. And one time I was teaching a class up at the Haystack Mountain School of Crafts, which is up in Maine. It's in Deer Isle, Maine, and it's part of the, there's a craft school consortium. It's just one of the, I believe there's 7 schools, but you can look it up. It's a really amazing place, Haystack Mountain. So I was teaching a kinetic jewelry class up there, meaning a class of teaching people how to make jewelry that moves, that has moving parts. And I had a lady in my class who clearly kind of came to a class with some baggage. She actually came with a really heavy suitcase, which I thought was an interesting analogy for what was happening with her. And I spent the first evening just talking to her, and it turned out that she had recovered from a big injury. She had actually been in an accident, a bicycle accident. She'd broken her spine, and she had been in recovery for a long time. Her father had died, and so she had inherited this house in the country in Maine with no power or water, which is fairly common in parts of Maine, and was wanting to rebuild this house, and was re-shingling the roof one day and caught herself and realized that she had no safety equipment, nothing that she'd set up as a precaution, and if she had fallen, not only could she have broken her back again, but she would have no way to contact anybody for help. And she realized that she needed to come to Haystack to connect with herself again and connect with her ability to create art, but also to figure out why she was putting herself in some unsafe situations. So what we ended up doing is we actually taught in that workshop something called a syringe ring, and I'll show you an example. I actually have one hanging up right here. So this is a syringe ring. You can put it on your finger. Ta-da! And it's made of telescoping tubing, so you can actually pull it. If you can see, you can pull it out and it will become a lot longer. So I'm going to do that. I'll show you. And what we did with that, sorry, we just bounced all over the place. What we did with that class is we actually asked the students to make forks with these, so you can see it becomes a lot longer than it was, right? Telescoping ring. We asked them to make forks, but this lady, she didn't want to make a fork, which is always fine with me. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. So she actually made, she asked me if she could make a rib cage out of brass, and I said, you can make whatever you want. I helped her cut it out. We soldered it to the end of her telescoping tubing. And then she also built these flowers out of copper. So when she pushed her ring together, when she combined all those telescoping tubings, what it did is it pushed this group of flowers that she had on spring wire, so they moved really well. She pushed these like dancing flowers through the spine, the rib cage that she had made out of brass. So these flowers just flew out of her back, and I looked at her and I was like, oh my gosh, look at what you just did. You like healed yourself through your own sense of creativity and creating beauty. And we had this really wonderful moment together, and it was a really important moment for me where I understood that's the power of creativity, is it can help us reconnect to ourselves and maybe we might be lost. And I've definitely had that experience in my life, going through divorce and other just hard situations. So I thank you for listening to my story. I hope that I get to see you in person really soon, and I hope that during this pandemic that you find spaces in your house, in your garden, in your wherever, garage, where you can create some beauty and find your own creativity, whatever it is. And if you have any questions or need some jump starts or ideas or support, just let me know. I'm here. That's what I do, is I help people find this part of themselves, and I try to engage with it in myself every single day. I love it. I find it to be the most important thing in my life, and I just love to share it with others, and I share that beauty is all around us, each and every day, each and every moment. All we have to do is see it. So thank you so much, and have a great time at the Luna Market. We're glad you're here.